So, crushes. Yeah, we're going there. This video will be the start to the story arc of sorts involving my exes that I had mentioned in my intro video, starting with the crushes and flings before getting into the real exes. A fling, by my definition, is someone who was more than a crush but was not exactly a full-fledged partner, or rather, someone you dated for maximum only a couple weeks. I've had a few of those, but I'll save them for last. I will also not be including cartoon or fandom crushes because, well, they're fake. However, some cartoon crushes I had when I was younger were Ash Ketchum, Mike from Total Drama, Duncan from Total Drama, and Dave from Total Drama. I watched a lot of Total Drama. Oops. Anyways, let's get into it. To start, my very first crush ever was a girl I went to dance class with. I was 6. For context, I am pansexual but would only ever be romantically involved with a cisgender man nowadays. I would go on to date someone who looked almost exactly like my first crush years later in life. However, that specific ex I have saved to be the series finale. It's a train wreck of a situation, and I hate even talking about it, but anyways, let's move on. Almost all of my elementary school crushes are mundane and irrelevant, but we will mention 3 of them who had some relevancy. For legal reasons, everyone in this series will not have their real names mentioned in the event that they find this channel or video and realize it's them that I'm talking about. First one we'll call Sonic, as in Sonic the Hedgehog. Second one will be known as Tiger, because his favorite animal back then was tigers. And the last one will be known as Lucario, because he was a huge Pokemon fan. And we had this weird inside joke involving Lucario. The only one I've kept up with nowadays is Lucario, while Sonic and Tiger, I have no idea where they're at or what they're doing. Though I could have sworn I ran into Sonic, who looked like he was working at my local gas station about a month ago. So, we'll start with Sonic, who was my very first school crush. Honestly, can't describe the feeling of the first time you have a childhood crush other than those butterflies, and that feeling like you're going to explode with happiness whenever they're around. Of course, back then, we were way too young for relationships. We were 7, for God's sake. I could tell he liked me too, and we did hug a couple times, but didn't go further than that, of course. Everyone called us quote-unquote boyfriends to be silly, but we, of course, never confirmed that. Again, we were 7. Sonic and I stayed somewhat friends throughout the whole school career we had, but we lost touch after graduation. If I ever ran into him in person again, I'd definitely give him a kind hello and ask how he's been. Next is Tiger, who I liked in 3rd grade for a couple months. I was 8. He was sort of a bully and liked to act like he was better or more dominant than everyone else. Like one time he climbed to the top of that spider web thing that they have on school playgrounds and claimed he was the king of recess. It was hilarious. However, the cherry on top of all this was the time that I was dared to, get this, kiss his cheek at recess. Yep, I'm not even kidding. I ended up doing it, but this garnered me a not-so-nice reputation afterwards. This crush was short-lived, and I became to know him as a bully. And that's exactly what he was in middle and high school. So if I saw him in person nowadays, our interaction would not be as pleasant as it would be if I saw Sonic. Last but not least is Lucario. I forget exactly how we became friends, but it was over something stupid. Our friendship was on and off constantly because of things that were said or done. One time he even slapped me because I was singing Lucario in person sitting in a tree, just having fun and playing around. Eventually I developed a not-so-secret crush on him that he reciprocated in his own weird way. However, since it was his 4th and the 5th grade, we were 10. Nothing came out of that either. We stayed friends till he moved away freshman year of high school, but then we slowly lost touch. I have seen his whereabouts, and I'm proud he found his passion, which is theater. If I ever saw him again in person, it would be a blast, to say the least. I'd honestly love to meet up and catch with him sometime in the future. Now, onto my middle school crushes, with the inclusion of one fling, which I will not explain yet. In 6th grade, I had one crush who we'll call Chatot, as in Chatot the Pokemon. At first, Chatot bullied me relentlessly, but then we just became friends after I randomly buried the hatchet one day in English class. It was very odd. I didn't develop a crush until a couple months later out of complete happenstance. My crush on him throughout the year was subtly hinted at, however, it was never confessed or shown to be obvious. He ended up telling me he liked another person, so I just left it in the rejected pile. Chat Out and I stayed friends up until graduation, and then we lost touch. Last I saw, he was enlisted in the army, so I hope that's going well for him. If I saw Chat Out in person nowadays, our interaction would certainly be pleasant. 7th grade, I had a few, but we'll name the two main ones. Cookie will be one, and Springtrap will be the other. Cookie was someone I thought fancied me, so in return, I started fancying him back. However, once my feelings were outed by this one girl who I told about them, he slowly started to drift away from me until he became, well, a bully. I learned from others that he thought I was weird, and that since I had a crush on him, he thought that becoming a bully would change that. It worked. We ended up making amends in 8th grade and staying friends, but by then I had moved on to Springtrap. As for Cookie and I, our friendship ran its course sometimes in sophomore or junior year of high school. If I saw Cookie in present times, we would have a pretty pleasant interaction, and I could maybe see us going to an arcade or something. Late 7th into 8th grade, I started to develop feelings for my best friend at the time, Springtrap. It spiraled so far out of control that I had convinced myself I was in love and he felt the same. Alas, it didn't go that way. The whole crush started as a prank when my one friend, who we'll call Cheerio, wanted to see how he'd react to me saying I have feelings for him. At first I was like, heck yeah, I'll do it. But as the days ticked on and I started thinking of how I was going to pull this prank off, I started to realize I really did like Springtrap. It was bad. The prank ended up backfiring because I couldn't tell him now that the feelings were real. Into 8th grade, it got worse and worse. He was my one and only crush that year, and I refused to give it up. After a while, it started to slowly drive me sort of insane. I started to try and intentionally ignore him and blank him at the lunch table, and eventually our friendship started going on and off multiple times throughout 8th grade. I found out near the end of 8th grade, right before my birthday no less, that he had a crush on a close friend of mine and not me. Needless to say, that broke me. There were many failed attempts to tell him how I felt, until finally, on the last day of school at all times, I told him how I felt. I didn't get an immediate response, and I hoped maybe he'd come around, but he did end up rejecting me, and that made me feel some type of way. A bad way. That rejection would lead to the worst decision I could have made at the time, which will be discussed in the finale. We ended up staying friends the rest of freshman year until he moved very far away and lost touch after sophomore year. Unfortunately, I don't think I'd ever see Springtrap again in person. I've been wanting to contact him again, however, but I don't know how I'd approach it as so much has changed since then. Now on to high school. Unfortunately, there won't be much here, since almost all of my crushes up through high school ended up being flings or actual relationships. Flings will be spoken about later in the video. Come to think of it, there's only one I can think of that wasn't either of those things, just a normal crush, and that would be a guy we will call Rockstar. I met Rockstar sophomore year of high school in an art class. He was a really cool, down-to-earth, very upfront dude. I started to really like him because of how cool he was and that he was really fun to talk to. I had not known at the time, but he already had a partner and wanted out of that relationship anyways. He wanted to be single for a while. At first I was crushed, but I learned to get over it and let bygones be bygones. I didn't let that ruin anything between us. If I saw Rockstar now, I probably wouldn't give him more than a smile and a wave, as he still makes me a bit nervous with how cool he was. Come to think of it, out of all of my crushes over the years, Rockstar is probably the closest in personality to my current partner. Now, onto the flings. My first fling was in 7th grade, if you could even call it one. Again, we were 12, but hey, if Gumball can have a full-on relationship, why can't middle schoolers in real life, am I right? Honestly, I don't care what anyone does as long as it's legal. Anyways, we will call this guy FaZe Clan, as he was obsessed with the FaZe Clan and all things Call of Duty back then. He was new to our school in November of 7th grade, and we were on and off friends. He'd bully me one day, but then change his attitude the next. Hot and cold, pretty much. He soon told me he had feelings for me, and I kind of felt the same way back, so we started quote-unquote dating. Again, 7th grade. I remember he wanted these 2 Pokemon cards I had so badly that I ended up giving them to him. However, I got them back once we stopped dating. He ended up, quote-unquote, cheating on me with someone else, and I found out and broke it off. But in reality, he was doing this with a lot of other people, not just me. If I saw FaZe Clan in person now, it would not be a pleasant interaction. Now onto my high school flings. First guy I will call Domino, as he was working at Domino's Pizza at this time. We started our fling early freshman year and it was legit done in a week. Oops. If I saw Domino in person, I'm not sure what kind of reaction I would have because after our fling, our friendship slowly started to fall apart. Next fling we will call Larry, as in Larry the Cucumber, as he liked VeggieTales. This fling lasted a mere few days in my sophomore year, and didn't escalate beyond that because of age differences and overall clashing personalities. He was a great dude, but we just didn't work out in the end. We stayed friends until he graduated that year and got in touch once afterwards, but after that we haven't spoken. If I saw Larry in person, I'd definitely hang with him and maybe get some pizza or something. He was a cool dude. And that's everybody. All my multiple crushes and my few flings. Remember, this is only the start to a multi-episode arc. I figured it would be best to start with the crushes and stuff that didn't really become actual, like, relationships or anything, like, serious like that. Anyways, the other episodes I will be making periodically throughout the next couple months or so, and each will focus on one ex instead of compiling them all like this video did, as some of those stories will be magnitudes longer than the crushes and flings mentioned here. See you soon, and thank you for watching.